All right, so today I'm talking about the 5 rules of authentic leadership. I speak a lot about authentic leadership on the Purpose Center Leadership page and on social media platforms because I really value it. And so I read an article recently over the weekend from Forbes about the 10 rules of authentic leadership. And I agreed with most of them, really. So I picked out the first 5 that resonated with me. And I want to talk about them here. And I definitely want to hear you guys' feedback because this this is talking about what your leader, if you're a leader, how you should be performing in the workplace, right? And if you are our manager, and if you're not in a leadership position right now, these are the traits that you should be looking for from an authentic leader. So the first point that they mentioned that I resonated with, of course, was cultivating self-awareness. I wrote an article in the newsletter here on LinkedIn about emotional intelligence recently. And so cultivating self-awareness, I really like this point because what she said here was a self-aware leader recognizes their strengths, skills, and unique traits, but also along with their blind spots, challenges, and biases. And I love that because I'm working with a team of leaders right now. And the last assignment I gave to them was to go and speak with someone in their organization that is trustworthy, who are not afraid to tell them the truth, and to ask that person to help them to identify their blind spots, because we all have blind spots, right? We all have blind spots, and that's why they're called blind spots, because we don't know we have them. And so for you to become a self-aware leader, you have to do 2 things. You have to spend time in self-reflection, right? Okay, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm not so great at. Here's my challenges currently. And, here are my strengths. The issue with a self-aware leader is that they may know of their weaknesses, but not necessarily their blind spots. So what are some typical blind spots that leaders have? Well, a leader could be very impatient for results and not realize it, or they could be judging their team based on how the team performs if it doesn't meet the standards that they want. For example, I may like doing things a certain way, right? And so I believe that as a blind spot, I may believe that everybody who's going to be effective should do things in the exact same way I do them. That's a blind spot. Okay. Another tricky blind spot that I've seen with both male and female leaders, female and male, no, it's not gender specific, is there are some leaders who are very talkative, right? They're very talkative, but the talkativeness could actually get into where it's almost like gossipy. Okay. So I worked with a leader like this years ago when I was younger. And she would have the tendency to have you in her office, and it would sound like a regular conversation, but then it would end up talking about another person. And you as an employee, you really feel instantly that tingling, like this is not right. But then you may also think, well, I'm special because she's confiding in me, or he's confiding in me. However, I notice that same pattern with other people. And so a blind spot could be that even though you want to be an open communicator, you have to be careful as a leader that your open communication or your openness doesn't turn into gossipness, right? So when you're looking to identify your blind spots, you need to be able to have someone, you need to be courageous enough to ask another trusted person, another trusted leader or sub-leader in your organization to help you to point out some potential blind spots without repercussions, okay? Because it would truly help you to grow. So it's great to be aware of your strengths and your challenges, but you need to also be aware of your blind spots and your biases, because we all have some level of bias, okay? So that was the first trait that they mentioned for authentic leadership. The second one was embracing vulnerability. And let me just see. Ali said, it makes sense. Over talking can be a blind spot, especially if you're not giving the other person opportunity to talk and share their perspective. Yes. And again, some leaders like to hear themselves talk because they believe that they're the authority on the subject. And that's a blind spot, because any leader who truly know themselves know that they don't have all the answers. They are not schooled in every area. And that's why great leaders hire great team members to fill in their weaknesses. But a leader can overtalk because they feel like A, they're in the power position, and B, they have all knowledge. So thanks for sharing that, Ali. Okay, and anyone else, please feel free to share. The second point was to embrace vulnerability. So from this article, vulnerability is the courage to admit you don't have all the answers and to take risks. It encourages deeper connections within your team and fosters a creative and courageous work environment. And of course, we all know that Brene Brown, she talks a lot about vulnerability. She said it's not a weakness, but is a measure of true courage. So vulnerability is a really tricky one, right? I love a vulnerable leader, but there is a fine line between vulnerability and appearing to be weak, okay? Or just being weak. So I love a leader who can say, hey, we tried something, it didn't work, but we gave it our best shot, but I might have miscalculated, I might have misjudged, I might have, my projections were off. So, hey, team, we're gonna retool, we're gonna regroup. I love that. I love a leader who can say, I was wrong in my approach here, in this particular situation, so, my apologies for that. Let's we'll correct and we'll move on. I love a leader who says, I'm feeling burnt out. So you know what, team, I am going to take a mental health day. I'll be back. I've developed you guys enough where you guys can run this place without me. So I'm going to take some time off with my family or with nature or whatever. I love that. I think it's courageous. I think it's great. And that fosters a lot of respect. Now, the flip side of that is if you are a leader who you're constantly telling us how weak you are, okay, you have to be careful, because then it's no longer vulnerability, it's more, what is this? And so your team can lose trust in your abilities, right? So vulnerability, you want to be authentically vulnerable. Like, hey, again, I'm burnt out, or we missed the mark. It was my responsibility. I didn't get it right. And because it shows that, you're strong enough, you're courageous enough to admit your weaknesses and admit your faults. However, there's a really fine line between being vulnerable and, again, over talking, oversharing as a leader. So I just wanted to just mention that. And Dee says, thank you. I need to work on me. Dee, I don't know if that's regarding point 1 or point 2 about self-awareness or vulnerability, but thank you for sharing that. But yes, so embracing vulnerability is key. Remember, leaders, you don't have all the answers. Your team knows it. And when we act like we know everything as leaders, honestly, we're the one everyone's laughing at. So it's okay to authentically admit where you're weak. It's okay to authentically admit where you're burnt out, you're tired, you missed the mark, you missed the numbers. But be very mindful of oversharing, okay? So the third thing that she mentioned here in the article from Forbes was to deeply, deeply understand your people. So she has here, you can't effectively lead people you don't know, okay? And she gave this story about this Navy officer who took command of one of the worst performing ships in the U.S. Navy. After 3 years, his ship became the highest performing ship. And in an article in Harvard Business Review, he explains how he literally turned the ship around by getting to know his crew as individuals, and that did more than generate innovative ideas and process improvement. So when he took the time to get to know his crew members as individuals, right, understanding their issues, their needs, it opened the door for innovative ideas and improvements, because now your team, the people who work with you, will feel like you have a vested interest in them. Now, prior to COVID, when we all worked in offices, right, not so much online, there was this concept, right, and companies still do it, but not so much. I don't hear about it as much anymore. Was management by walking around, right? MBWA, management by walking around. And I used to practice this when I ran my law practice. I used to practice walking around and just, checking with my people, checking with my team. How you doing? How's your family doing? Because, your team, they take their whole selves to work. So if there's issues in their family, if there's a loved one having issues, if there is, heaven forbid, a death or an illness, it's going to affect them at work. And so it will sensitize you as their leader or even as their manager to know, okay, maybe they can't take on that particular project today because they're dealing with a loved one who is ill or who is, compromised in some way. And so that really fosters a culture of trust and loyalty, right? So now, even though we can't walk around the office as we used to prior to COVID, for those of you who work remote or, hybrid, you can still check in with your team. So if your team is 5 or it's 50, it takes effort, but it's worth it. Now, if your team happens to be, 100 people, obviously you can't get to know everyone. However, there are people over those 100 people. There are managers, team leaders. Get to know that layer very well, because they're the ones who have the most impact on the people. So you as a leader, you need to impact those people, intimately know those people, understand their pain points, their issues as well, so that their impact, travels down, downhill, so to speak. So again, I'd love to hear your all thoughts on these rules of authentic leadership. The fourth one that she mentioned of my 5 that I'm going to discuss today was to acknowledge publicly. Okay. And so the point this article made was recognition is a powerful motivator. The most emotionally intelligent leaders know that phrases like, I appreciate your work, resonate deeply. And research from Preply supports that employee recognition, when authentic, and embedded in company culture, is pivotal for a thriving environment. Let me talk about that for a second. Okay, so I read years ago that there was one report. It might have been in one of Daniel Pink's book, Carrots and Sticks, I think it might have been. But anyway, it talked about how for some people, for some employees, public recognition was even more motivational to them than a raise, right? Of course, a huge raise, nothing motivates more than a huge raise, but the raise that companies do, 2 or 3%, is kind of like negligible. But recognition was so important to them, all right? And it was so motivational and inspirational. Now, authentic appreciation, though, is important. So what do I mean by that? So everyone on the team knows who the best performers are amongst themselves. Everyone knows. We all know who the star player is. We know whether we like them or not like them. We know that guy or that gal, they're the star players. We also know who the poor performers are, right? That maybe management has not, moved along yet. So if you as a manager or as a leader starts to publicly compliment a poor performer, what happens when you do that is that you've lost credibility with all future compliments. Okay, your compliments, your appreciation, your open recognition will have no worth. It will have zero impact because you didn't give an authentic compliment, right? Or authentic recognition. Now, let's say there's a team of 10 people in your organization, right? And you have a couple of key players. but you want to have everyone feeling good. You could say something like this, especially after the end of a successful project. Team, great job, collectively, we got this done, we met our numbers, we surpassed our numbers. And I want to specifically recognize, Jane and Bob, okay? Because I know that they put in extra effort. They came in early, showed up, stayed late, came in early, came in on the weekends. You need to do that for Jane and Bob to continue to be the star performers that they are. So this is where public recognition is important. Now, you not trying to make anyone else feel bad, but you're making the people who deserve praise to be praised. And again, like I said, never, never, never publicly acknowledge in a complimentary way a non-performer. Okay, what you want to do with a maybe lower level performing person, to still be supportive. If of course, you should have your private conversations to figure out why they're not performing well. But what you want to do with that person is to say, all right, I appreciate your effort, right? However, we have ways to go. We have more to do. Let's have a conversation as to how I can help you, develop more, get your goals or whatever it may be. But never waste a compliment in front of the other team publicly on a non-performer. It will discredit all future compliments. Okay. How does the culture of the organization influence the style of leadership at a group level while ensuring you don't lose your authenticity? So I'm just going to say, so the culture of an organization shouldn't influence the style of leadership. The leadership influences the culture of an organization. Okay. And so culture is really set by the leadership. That's really who it is. If you're in a company and the culture is off, toxic, laissez-faire, non-productive, that's a leadership issue. That's a leadership issue. And if you're in an organization that the culture doesn't work for you, it's hard for you. And let's say you are a high performer, you have a different way of looking, you have different values, that will not last. That will not work for you, because culture is determined by that leader. That's where culture is determined. Steve, that's where truly knowing your team is so important. Some thrive on public praise and some shut down, but authentic pats on the back are so important for everyone. Steve, absolutely. And you're right. Steve made a good point. Some people shy away from the public praise. Now, even shy people though, okay, because at one point I was shy, not anymore, but even shy people who doesn't want the spotlight, honestly though, the embers burn in their heart when they are publicly acknowledged. They may not want to go up front and give a speech, but let me tell you, they appreciate that that compliment, that praise. They do. And remember, when you're praising authentically, the other people who were maybe not singled out, well, they would aspire, right, to be on that level, on that platform, right? So if it's an authentic, because like I said, everyone knows who the star performers are. So if you're giving an authentic compliment to someone who deserves it, whether you like that person or not, doesn't matter. You know in your heart that they deserve it. It will hopefully motivate and inspire you who was not complimented publicly to up your game. Success leaves clues to see what did they do, what were they being complimented for. And that's another reason too. When you're complimenting someone publicly, it's good to explain why. So, Steve, great job. I loved how you were able to get our numbers from 20 to 50 in record time. that's never been done before. You need to give some details so that people know, oh, wow, because they probably didn't even know you're being complimented, but why? But when a leader can say, you were able to do this to this, and that deserves credit, then the people who are watching, the onlookers, your peers, will know why you're being complimented. Say that's true. 100% agree. Leadership sets foundation of what the culture will be. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, leaders like to take credit when things are great, but when things are not great, it's still a leader. I mean, it's still a leader. That's why they're called leader, right? They're leading culture, they're leading people, they're leading results. And that is the reason why leaders should never worry about, competition, in internal competition. What leaders need to focus on is how they can get the best team around them. Okay, because when you have the best ideas around you, you're able to develop great cultures and keep great people. You are spot on. It does not last. Yeah. And then Jason, what if the leader is threatened by you? Jason, I just mentioned that yes, there are leaders who are threatened by you. Unfortunately, that is a fact, especially on a manager level. I've seen it. Okay, on a manager level, a leader, usually like a founder or a CEO, they're hardly threatened because they know they can just fire you, or they're the boss. They write your paycheck. They cover your paycheck. They're less threatened by you. But managers tend to, weaker managers who are not developed, who is in a culture where there's very little personal development, leadership development, managers who got there because of hard work or favoritism, they tend to have the insecurities where they can be threatened by other star players. And let's face it, some people are just really smart and star players, and they're obviously smarter than the manager who is there. So there's nothing you can do about that as a employee. Now, what I did when I ran my organization, because I knew this was a fact with the manager level and I saw it with my own eyes, I incentivized my managers. Their incentives were based on how many people they developed to be ready for management. So their bonuses were tied into that. I also implemented a 360 review process where employees had the opportunity to review the manager, as well as, of course, me ahead above them. So it was fair. So my managers were incentivized to develop people and take away the threat altogether, because it does happen. It does happen. Great questions, you all. Great questions. And the fifth point that I took away from this article was let's see where we're at, was to commit to lifelong learning. And this was on the manager level. So it says here, no one wants to work for a relic, okay? For a reluctant relic who relies on what got them to where they are now. Leaders who continuously seek knowledge and embrace new ideas inspire their teams to do the same. By showing a commitment to growth and learning, you encourage a similar mindset in your team. I really, 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 really love this point. So if you are a leader, it's 2024, and in 2012, let's say you started your company, your organization, and it grew. But if you're still in the 2012 mindset and knowledge, your company is going to actually plateau pretty quickly and soon, if it's not already plateauing, because you are still trading on yesterday's thoughts. There's a book that says what got you here won't get you there. And I know personally, true confession, I'm as an executive leadership coach, I'm always challenging myself, like, okay, what else can I learn that I can bring to the table? I have a lot of experience, running companies, running nonprofits, running law practices, running, corporations. And I work with clients from different backgrounds, but what else can I bring to the table? So it's a constant reminder to learn. So I take additional, courses, I take certification programs, I listen to podcasts that I know my clients should listen to. I listen to them so I can recommend it to them and why I'm recommending it to them. And the more I learn, obviously, the more I have to pour out. It's the same thing for leaders. If you're a leader, you're watching. What was the last new thing you learned? You might have been an amazing, inspirational leader in 2012 with wonderful ideas and saw quick growth in your organization. And put whatever year you want on it. But it's now 2024. Have you shifted in your mind in any way? We're in the era of AI. I mean, it's like revolutionizing the way how we do things. Are you up on AI? Are you, as a leader, are you harnessing the power of AI, or are you shutting it out? What are you doing? Are you challenged by new things or new ideas? Or are you, embrace, or do you embrace it? Are you afraid, or do you embrace? So being a lifelong learner as a leader is important, because then, as someone asks about the competition, if you are, as a leader, is setting the tone for, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's how I'm growing, here's the latest thing I've discovered, and you're bringing that back to your team, then your team members will that will be part of your culture. Your team members will also want to learn. And finally, I want to say this too. One of the things that I employed when I run a law practice with my team, and even when I run my charity, is I would pay for education, and maybe you can't afford to pay for a college degree, but you could assist your team members who want to go back to school with, you can help them to offset the cost, or you could also have them do just development stuff. You could bring a coach in, you could bring a consultant in, you could do quarterly lunch and learns, but developing that culture of learning and developing and growing, first starting with the leader and then having that infiltrate in the culture, is going to push your organization forward. It is going to get you guys more ready for the 21st century, I guess. So if there's any more questions or comments, please share before I say goodbye. Glory lies in the attempt to reach one's goals and not in reaching it. Absolutely. Attempt the impossible in order to improve your work. I love that. Many people don't start stuff. They don't start to learn. They don't start a new project. They don't start a new venture because they're afraid they may never reach it. But as you point out here, Mr. Lockhart, you're saying the glory, the satisfaction, the gift lies in the attempt to reach one's goal, even if it did not quite reach it, right? Even if it didn't quite reach it. So that is my teaching for today. I will most likely be back here next Monday at the same time with the remaining 5, which talks about prioritizing your people's well-being. She talks about listening intently, fostering a culture of belonging, adopting a coaching leadership style, and hyper-personalizing. And so I thank you so much for you guys who have joined. And if you're a team replay, if you're watching this and if it's after 2:30 p.m. on Eastern on Monday, your team replay, but I will still take your questions. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you. You're welcome, Ali. And could ever be a guest speaker on your lives? Absolutely. I'm an emerging leadership developer and I love what you do. Go ahead, Jason, and send me a DM. I have guests on many times. So go ahead and DM me. I'd love to have guests. Anyone else watching, if you want to be a guest, just DM me, Sharon Gill. I'll put my name somewhere. Hopefully you guys can see it and just, click on that. Thank you so much for your kind words, Naren. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys back here next week. Take care and have a wonderful, wonderful week this week. Thank you so much.